You're watching KRDO News Channel 13, where the news comes first. Your news starts right now.
Happening right now in Denver, authorities fired tear gas and knocked down a makeshift barricade next to the Colorado State Capitol to enforce a curfew against protesters in the third night of demonstrations. And right here in Colorado Springs, people are also protesting the death of George Floyd. They fled tonight with protesters and officers in a confrontation outside the city's police operations center. We've got team coverage on the protests in both Colorado Springs and Denver. We'll get to KRDO News Channel 13's Chelsea Brentzel and Danny Mata in a few moments. But first, let's go to Zachary Aiedo, who's live near the El Paso County Courthouse with the latest.
That's right, Willis. This is the first time that we've had a protest in Colorado Springs in reaction to the video of George Floyd's death. Now, just 5 minutes ago, there was hundreds of protesters here. They came from the POC to the county courthouse, and immediately police and sheriff deputies, they came here and they started deploying tear gas on the crowd, dispersing them. We're not exactly sure where they are. They may have headed to the POC, but this is a much different scene than what we've seen, or this is a much different scene than what was happening earlier. I've been here since 3 p.m. and until 5:30 p.m. there was a peaceful protest. About 1,000 people were there at this protest earlier, and that was peaceful. There was no riots or vandalism that we saw there. But police say that after 5:30, and also bystanders and protesters tell me that after that, when the protests kind of started dispersing, some people headed toward the POC, and that's when the vandalism or riots started. That's when the protests seem to have gotten a bit more unruly. And they tell me that that's when they started throwing rocks and doing graffiti on public property. And so that's when police have been coming out in riot gear for those protesters.
Thank you, Zach. Up north, we're continuing to follow riots in Colorado's capital. Protesters are still out on the streets despite an 8 p.m. curfew handed down by the mayor. Let's get straight to KRDO News Channel 13's Chelsea Brentzel, who's been out there all day. Chelsea.
Well, Willis, tonight the situation here in Denver remains tense. Just minutes ago, firefighters actually put out a fire. Protesters, rioters actually set a garbage can on fire. So the protests initially were peaceful, but quickly escalated as officers and the National Guard work to enforce the curfew. Chaos in Denver Saturday.
We are all in together in this, and we can't keep pretending like this isn't happening.
Thousands flocked to the state capitol to protest police brutality across the country. Obviously, this situation isn't dying down. Officers still working to enforce the curfew. We're going to check back in with you guys in just a little bit, try and figure out what's going on. For now, live in Denver, Chelsea Brentzel, KRDO News Channel 13.
Thank you, Chelsea. We want to get another angle on the protest that's happening right now in Colorado Springs. News Channel 13's Danny Mata joins us now from the CSPD Operations Center, where things haven't let up. Danny, what are you seeing?
Well, Willis, right here on this intersection of Nevada and Rio Grande, not all that long ago, we had police officers that were lined up right here. Protesters were coming up the street. They were chanting, "No justice, no peace." At that point, police officers started to fire tear gas into the crowd, and they started firing a couple of shots that went over here, down this way, all tear gas. It flooded the area. My photographer, Colin Porter, and I had to bail. We had to turn around and book it further down the street to get away from the tear gas, and not very pleasant to be hit with tear gas. We had trouble breathing. It got into our eyes, and we had to drive away as quickly as we could while we could still see and breathe, and we had to pull over, and we needed some time. But that's what the scene was just about 15 minutes ago. You can see how now it has dispersed. The officers now, there's a lot fewer of them, and they've started to move on. There's only this line that you see here down the street. Now, we have been told that what the protesters have been doing all day is they get up to this point, and then they're pushed back, and they regroup at City Hall, and then they start marching right back up this way. So we are going to go down that way and see if they're coming back. But right now, it's loosened up just a little bit over here, although we did just hear some sort of a bang about 1 block up the street, so we'll go and investigate that. But that's the situation right now. It wasn't all that long ago that the cops were firing tear gas into the crowd to disperse it, and so far it's a little bit calm. There's still a little bit of tear gas in the air. You can smell it and you can feel it on your eyes and your mouth, but otherwise things have calmed down. Reporting live from downtown Colorado Springs, Danny Mata, KRDO, News Channel 13.
Thanks, Danny. I'm glad you're keeping your distance from that tear gas. Stay safe out there. Right now, we want to get back to our team coverage on the protests in both Colorado Springs and Denver. First, let's check back in with Danny Mata, who's live near the city's Police Operations Center with the latest. Danny, what can you tell us?
Well, Willis, when we first talked to you, the tear gas had just been launched by the police officers. The crowd had dispersed and had gotten quiet. We also told you that the crowd all day has been regrouping at City Hall and coming back up the street. Here they are. They're all right here. They have regrouped. You could hear they're chanting, "No justice, no peace." They're also chanting, what was his name? George Floyd. Another thing that just happened right here. This is Moreno right here. There's a few minutes ago, a protester tried to start a fire in a bush over here. Another protester put the fire out, saying we are not them, meaning the police, trying to advocate against the destruction of property. So that just happened about 5 minutes ago, and now the crowd, I'm not sure why, but they're all gathering. The police officers up the street are starting to line up across the intersection again, and that's where we're at right now. A few moments ago, the scene had actually calmed down. It looked like a few officers had left and it looked like everything was calming down, but now things are heating back up. Reporting live in downtown Colorado Springs, I'm Danny Mata. Now we send it over to Zachary Aedo with more.
Well, Willis, we're here on Moreno in Nevada as well, and right now we just see about a crowd of almost 100 people gathering. Now, when we were at the county courthouse, what we saw is police dispersing the crowd, and we actually drove around the city to see where else the protesters were gathering. We've seen a police presence at the county courthouse, at the Police Operations Center, and also at the city administration building. It seems like they're trying to protect anything that involves the city, but it does seem like the crowd has gotten smaller from what we saw earlier, and it has just been a cycle of people heading toward the Police Operations Center, police then telling them that this is an unlawful assembly after they threw rocks or did graffiti vandalism at some of the police cars, and then tear gas happens. And so it's kind of been a cycle of what we've seen today. Much different scene than the protest between 3 and 5:30 p.m. that ended at Acacia Park, and then a couple people started heading toward the Police Operations Center. So we're gonna keep this live coverage going. I believe we also are live in Denver.
Yeah, well, what I can tell you is that every single street that we've been on here near 12th Avenue has had police officers going up and down, not just the streets, but also the alleyways, trying to enforce this curfew. It's been pretty intense at times. Even just in the last 20 minutes, they've shot off rounds of tear gas and pepper spray and whatnot. So it's still a very intense situation. Lots of people obviously have a lot that they want to get out there, but officers are asking people to stay inside their homes. We've seen people standing outside on their balconies yelling at the officers, but the one thing I can tell you, the one thing that we've seen more than anything, is that this destruction in the city of Denver is growing every single minute. People are spray painting, people are knocking out windows. Those are just some of the things that we've seen, but we're going to continue to monitor the situation for you here in Denver. Chelsea Brentzel, KRDO News Channel 13.
Chelsea, things look pretty well cleared out there right now. Could you just tell us what's the difference in the size of the crowds that you're seeing now as compared to earlier tonight?
Yeah, so it seems like people have mostly went back to their homes. They're maybe standing on the sidewalk. So it's not thousands, right? But we have seen, I would say, probably at least 100 just in this small radius that we're in near 12th Avenue. So it's definitely cleared out significantly. We just are trying to keep up with the officers and the protesters. They have set fires. So obviously fire trucks are kind of trying to rush by us. We're just trying to stay out of the way and stay safe, but there's still a significant amount of people out here.
All right, thank you very much, Chelsea. We'll be right back after this break. We're getting back to the protest happening right now in Colorado Springs. Zach Aedo is in downtown. Zach, what can you tell us? What's going on right now?
Well, a block away from Police Operations Center, there's once again tear gas being deployed by police. Now, we also know from police that roads downtown are being closed. People are being asked to stay away from downtown. And the police also tell us that multiple people have been arrested for these acts of violence, and they say that those acts of violence include throwing glass, rocks, and also graffiti vandalism. We're gonna keep this coverage later tonight.
All right, guys, well, hey, they just launched tear gas once again. So that crowd right there, Rio Grande, Nevada, the police officers just launched tear gas back into the crowd to disperse it. That's why we had to come over here. You can see like they're kind of, you might be able to see the smoke out in the distance. I'm not sure how good the shot is out here, but they just they just launched tear gas into the crowd. It's burning a little bit. It's not too bad where we are, but tear gas is pretty powerful. So once again, they dispersed the crowd, and that's where we're at.
You're watching KRDO News Channel 13, where the news comes first. Your news starts right now.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for KRDO News Channel 13 at 10. I'm Willis Scott. Our top story tonight is continuing team coverage of the protests in downtown Colorado Springs. Those protests were sparked after the death of George Floyd, who was killed in Minneapolis after a police officer knelt on his neck for several minutes. Let's go to Danny Mata first. Danny, it looks like the situation is getting tense again tonight.
Hey guys, so right now what's happened so far is there's been a standoff here with police officers for a while now. It's been about an hour. Now, until just a few moments ago, the police had not issued any warnings to the crowd or any orders to disperse in any way. There had not been any rocks thrown. There haven't been any vandalism as far as I can tell. But what has happened is the standoff has continued for an hour. Now, we thought that earlier today that everything was over because the crowd gathered around. It got really tense here for a second, and then there was a talk between the officers and the protesters, and then the crowd dispersed. They were able to move further down. Sergeant Olaf Cheney is the one who was talking to the protesters, and what he decided to do was he decided to listen to anyone that wanted to talk to him. They gave him flowers as a peace offering, and it looked like everything had de-escalated. Then the crowd regrouped. They came back here, and we have been a standoff for about an hour. But again, no tear gas has been fired. We haven't had any violence, so that's where we're at right now. But we have a standoff that has been going on for some time now.
Thank you, Danny. You'll notice that that shot of Danny was fairly dark. The reason we're doing that is to keep from drawing attention to our crews who are out there this evening. We've also got KRDO's Crystal Story out there. She spoke with Mayor John Suthers earlier today. Crystal, what did the mayor have to say about these protests?
Willis, there's definitely some tug and pull between two groups of people here who are protesting. We'll get to what Mayor John Suthers said in just a second, but you have people who want absolutely no violence. They want nothing to do with the big crowd that's behind me. That's closer to where Danny is. He is closer to the crowd. We're giving you a vantage point here. There's definitely people who want to confront police, and there are others who want to back off and not cause any violence. Mayor Suthers said today these people can protest for as long as they want into the night and into the week even if they stay peaceful. On the second day of protest in Colorado Springs, most of the crowd kept to this corner in front of City Hall. But it came after a night of confrontation with police.
Command you to immediately
Now, like you heard Danny say, up until an hour ago, this crowd in front of the Police Operations Center had completely dispersed. And while most of the crowd is kept to this area, you've got police blockades all over downtown Colorado Springs. So right now we're on Tejon. There's a police blockade right here down on Moreno. You've got another at Cimarron and Nevada, and then another up on Tejon. And I believe this is Moreno again. So certainly a high police presence you've got all throughout downtown Colorado Springs. The hope is that nothing violent happens again like it did last night. We'll keep monitoring it for you throughout the show. For now, we're live in downtown Colorado Springs. Crystal Story, KRDO News Channel 13.
Thank you, Crystal. No tear gas used tonight. That's certainly good news.
It's been awesome seeing the community come out, taking a moment of silence for George Floyd. And you just see a semi-truck come barreling through, trying to kill people, and I don't understand.
The driver taken to the hospital and now under arrest.
Appreciate that.
We're breaking out of that story right now because Colorado Springs police are giving an update, and we're going to go to that right now live.
and I'm hoping that you take this to heart. After I read this, I want to keep things peaceful, okay? I think that's, sorry about that. I don't know how much louder I can get. Right there, that's fine. Okay, all right.
It's the loudest one.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to ask somebody to do. Ma'am, can you step forward and hold this piece of paper? Thank you. Because I need glasses, and I'm an old fart, all right? So I need glasses, so I'm going to try to do this to where I can do it and read it out loud and do it right. Please don't stand behind me. Okay.
Get over here.
First of all, we understand why you folks are here, all right? And we are trying to do our best job in keeping it peaceful for both sides. We're trying to keep our folks safe. We're trying to keep the city safe. We're trying to keep the citizens safe, the businesses safe, and we want you to be safe. Okay, so I hope you understand that. And that's coming from the heart. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Hey, I'm in the middle of this. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. This, folks. All right, listen. I'm going to read. So give me a chance to finish this, please. Is that fair? All right. Over the past few days, this is from the chief, I want you to know, okay? It's either the chief or the mayor or both, but just understand it comes from the top. Over the past few days, I have thought deeply about what I can say as your city's chief of police. And again, I apologize, I've got these, I'm trying to read this through a glass here. Chief of police that would make a difference following the events that transpired in Minneapolis. As I reflected, I came to understand that there are no words that could fully provide stability after the video has caused so much strife, pain, anger, and a negative perception of law enforcement across our entire nation. Instead, I want to give you my honest outlook. I am not in a position to sit in judgment of another law enforcement organization or their. Now listen to me. Hey, you said you said you would let me finish.
Let him finish. Let him finish.
Let me finish, please. Just like we try not to judge individuals. All right, let me finish. Let me finish.
Let him finish.
Let him finish.
Thank you. From what I have seen and from what I know about use of force procedures, the actions of the police in Minneapolis were questionable and tragic. In being transparent with everyone, I am saddened. I am saddened by Mr. Floyd's death, as every life is precious. And that's a true statement, people.
What about Devon
I am saddened watching videos of communities being burned in protest, as violence is never the answer. And lastly, I am saddened to see trust in law enforcement diminish, as the actions of a few do not represent us all. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, that is the message from the chief. I told.
Tell Chief Gonzalez, eat that fucking. Can I ask a question?
I'll try to answer everything I can if you give me that opportunity. But at least you heard it from the chief himself.
They can't take a knee with us. They can't take a knee with us. Take a knee, please.
You got a question?
Yes. Well, hold on. Take a knee. You want to eat that? Okay.
What you just saw was a Colorado Springs police officer reading a statement to the crowd that's protesting out there right now. I want to say that was Sergeant Olaf Cheney, but tough to see from the video. What we do know is that he read that statement from the chief, and the chief was saying that he's not in a position to judge another police department. That received a lot of boos from the crowd. When that officer was able to continue reading the statement, he said that the chief called the situation tragic and that he's saddened by Floyd's death. The protesters responded, asking the police to take a knee, and then the officer started taking questions from the crowd. We'll be right back with more coverage on this and weather. Welcome back. We want to get right to the latest in the protest happening downtown in Colorado Springs. We just heard a report that police have fired tear gas. KRDO News Channel 13's Crystal Story is right there right now. Crystal, what happened?
Willis, it was just a few minutes after we heard Sergeant Cheney speaking to the crowd, just a few minutes after that, as was when we heard a loud noise. It wasn't quite a bang. It sounded, without having professional sounds with me, like a big whoosh. Some protesters who were running by from this big crowd outside of the police that someone threw a bottle of something over from the protest side over to the police side, and then we got another protester who started on the police side who says that big sound came from their end, and that sound was followed by what sounded like either tear gas or a shot of some sort, but it certainly started a huge crowd of people to start running. They seem to have made their way back, and there hasn't been any sounds that have come from that area, but we want to go to reporter Danny Mata, who's over closer. Danny, what do you see?
Well, Crystal, when I was out there, we saw Sergeant Olaf Cheney was reading a statement from the commissioner, and he was talking about how the commissioner said that he was saddened by the loss of life of George Floyd, but he wasn't in a position to judge his guilt. So what happened was the crowd, they wanted him to take a knee. They wanted the officers to take a knee with them, and the crowd started chanting, "If you take a knee, we'll leave." Well, they didn't take a knee. Sergeant Olaf said he couldn't do that because of the safety of the officers. Somebody threw a water bottle, and it went right over our heads, and it splashed my photographer, Zach Aedo, and I as it was going over our head. At that point, someone started throwing fireworks, and then the police officer started moving up. You can see over here, there's an orange cone in the middle of the road right here. And that was like the neutral point where nobody was crossing. And so what happened was, after the fireworks went off, the officers started moving up, and they started moving the crowd back. And so now, here they are. They have stepped up considerably, as you can see, up the street, back from where they were before. Now, again, this is a standoff that did not involve any sort of projectiles or any sort of violence or vandalism or anything like that. And I don't know if that's changed, but what happened was somebody threw a water bottle, and then fireworks came out, and then it just kind of escalated from there. And that's where we're at right now.
All right. Thank you, Danny. Back to the protests in downtown Colorado Springs. Now, things had stayed peaceful up until a few minutes ago. KRDO News Channel 13's Danny Mata's out there. Danny, what's going on right now?
Hey, Willis. Yeah, so basically we just had another little firework just went off just a second ago. So things are starting to heat up. You can see right here. Here's the police officers. Again, they have moved up the street, and they have been asking the protesters to stay behind that barrier. The protesters are now behind the barrier again, but another firework just got launched. Still haven't seen any tear gas yet, but things are definitely escalating. This follows an hour-long standoff, so we will keep you up to date. You can follow us on Twitter, and we will have the latest updates of what's going on. And also, let's go over to Crystal's story.
Yeah, I'm just on the outside of the crowd from where Danny Mata is. You can see that is the Police Operations Center. It's the most lit part of this neighborhood, and it's where the crowd has stayed through a majority. That's the standoff that Danny is talking about. On the other side of that building is where police are in their riot gear. But you've got plenty of people who have ran away from the crowd because of some of the sounds they've heard come out of that area. So you've got people wandering the streets all over downtown Colorado Springs, trying to stay aware of what's going on, but still wanting to be close enough. We'll have more right after this break.
We begin our noon show with breaking news. The police officer at the center of George Floyd's death in Minneapolis, Derek Chauvin, now under arrest. Chauvin can be seen pressing his knee into Floyd's neck for 9 minutes on Monday, killing him. The incident has spurred fiery protests in Minneapolis and violent events last night in Denver with calls for Chauvin's arrest.
Right now in downtown Denver, people are beginning to gather after this news. KRDO News Channel 13's Chelsea Brensel is live right now. Chelsea, what can you tell us?
Good afternoon. A much calmer situation here in Colorado's capital this afternoon. I'm going to walk out of the shot and let you see there are about 50 protesters standing outside of the Capitol building holding signs chanting, "I can't breathe." It appears that protesters are adhering to Colorado leaders' request for peaceful demonstrations. This comes after last night's protest turned violent. 13 arrests were made and 3 officers were injured last night, but a much more peaceful situation here. You can see that people stopping on the street to honk their horns in support of these protesters. The police chief vowed today that his force will respect all that they served during this protest. We're going to continue to monitor this situation in Denver as it develops and bring you the very latest on air and on KRDO.com. Live in Denver, Chelsea Brensel, KRDO News Channel 13.
Chelsea, thank you for that breakdown. Hopefully those protests can remain peaceful today. Last night turned dangerous, though, in Denver. Police threw tear gas into the crowd of protesters. One person was hit by a car, windows broken, and cars vandalized.
At one point, shots were fired, but Denver police later said they were not related to the protests. KRDO News Channel 13's Colby Crosley joins us now from downtown Denver with the aftermath.
Less than 24 hours after protests broke out here at the state capitol, crews are now on scene cleaning up the aftermath. Broken glass, spray paint, garbage, and leftover tear gas canisters. What started out as a peaceful protest quickly turned to chaos.
Less than an hour ago, Denver Police Chief Paul Paso says he stood by the actions of his officers. Take a listen.
However, last night, when the protest crossed over into destructive, dangerous, and criminal behavior that is no longer acceptable, and it requires law enforcement intervention.
Governor Jared Polis released this statement last night following the violence that took place in Denver during the protests. He wrote, quote, "Tonight is a very sad night for our state. While we are still uncovering all of the facts about what took place, a protest regarding the killing of George Floyd devolved into vandalism and violence. Coloradans are better than this. I share the immense anguish we all feel about the unjust murder of George Floyd, but let me be clear, senseless violence will never be healed by more violence," end quote.
Now to that update on the coronavirus.
Let's listen in as Governor Jared Polis is briefing us on what exactly they've discovered.
Has run approximately 93 tests that have come back negative. As we informed the public earlier this week, we have been preparing for and expecting this situation for some time. We have an incredible team in place to keep Coloradans safe and to contain the spread of positive cases. By acting quickly, All right,
if you're just joining us, you've been listening to Governor Jared Polis talk about the first presumptive confirmed case of coronavirus in Colorado. Just to recap, a male in his 30s who traveled February 29th to Colorado by plane. He had recently visited the country of Italy, where there was already an outbreak.
Another big headline, another big takeaway from that press conference is a second presumed positive of coronavirus here in Colorado, unconnected with a man who visited Summit County. So we will continue to learn more details. The governor, it appeared as though he didn't even know the details yet of the second case. So more to be fleshed out. This is not a surprise. We were expecting some of these results to come back either presumptive positive or positive. That guy who visited Summit County, we are still awaiting a positive identification of coronavirus here in Colorado from the CDC. We will keep you updated. We'll be right back. Breaking right now, we have learned of the first case of the coronavirus here in El Paso County. You are looking live at the El Paso County Health Department, where we are expecting a news conference any minute. They told us it would happen at 4:30, so we will hang out here and wait to see what happens. No officials in view of our camera yet, but rest assured they are getting ready to tell us more details about this presumed positive case about a male in his 40s with recent travel history to California. Apparently, he is currently isolated at home and in stable condition. The state health department can test for coronavirus, and they will give back either a presumed positive case or negative. If it's presumed positive, then that will be taken to the CDC. And now we can see those officials lining the podium there at the El Paso County Health Department. You can see the learning impaired person standing to the left-hand side of your screen. We also see Mayor John Suthers of Colorado Springs standing around and flanked by that podium. I can't quite make out the other officials from this standpoint, but again, breaking news. It just came in this afternoon to the KRDO studios, and let's listen in.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming.
You're watching KRDO News Channel 13, where the news comes first. Your news starts right now.
Tragedy in Canyon City. A child is dead. A father arrested after running over his own son, then driving off for 15 minutes before returning to find the toddler's lifeless body in the driveway.
The father, Isaac Bullard, was allegedly high at the time. Bullard told investigators he never realized what happened until his son wasn't in his car seat. This is News Channel 13 at 5 o'clock. I'm Bart Bedsole.
And I'm Heather Skold, and we have team coverage on this tragic story out of Fremont County with KRDO News Channel 13's Dan Beatty and Chase Golightly, who's at the fire station where the child was taken. But first, we want to start with Dan and those details.
Yeah, the coroner here in Fremont County tells me the boy was actually 2 years old, not 3 years old, as we were previously reporting. His father's being held here at the Fremont County Detention Center. He's expected to be released soon. A judge issued a personal recognizance bond earlier today. Now, Bullard faces a number of charges, including child abuse, vehicular homicide, and driving while under the influence. Bullard told detectives he consumed a dab or a marijuana concentrate earlier that morning. Now, he submitted to a sobriety test, which he failed. Reporting live in Canyon City, Dan Beatty, KRDO, News Channel 13.
And again, that child was taken about a mile away to a Canyon City fire station.
And that's where we find News Channel 13's Chase Golightly to pick it up from there. Chase.
Bart, Heather, the fire department telling me what happened is nothing short of tragic. Adding on a regular basis, they respond to emergency calls involving death, but having that death brought to their front doors yesterday, something that fire personnel is still coping with today.
You're watching KRDO News Channel 13, where the news comes first. Your news starts right now.
Rearrested, the father charged with running over his own toddler son, then driving off for 14 minutes before returning to the boy's lifeless body. Taken back into custody today on serious new charges. Welcome to KRDO News Channel 13 at 5 o'clock. I'm Heather Skold.
And I'm Stephanie Sierra in for Bart tonight. Well, he bonded out just 90 minutes ago. Isaac Bullard under arrest yet again today on 4 new felony drug charges for allegedly operating a black market marijuana grow out of his home in Canyon City. And new suspicions that the toddler had been living in dangerous conditions inside that home.
News Channel 13's Dan Beatty has been on top of the story since it broke Wednesday evening and has the latest. Dan?
Heather, Stephanie, community members erected this small memorial in honor of the 2-year-old in the exact same spot where he lost his life on Wednesday. But today, the attention turns to what exactly has been going on inside the home where Isaac Bullard and his 2-year-old son lived. Now, according to court documents, the illegal marijuana grow inside the home was so large that it took up more than half of their living quarters.
Nearly 1,000 seniors from the Air Force Academy are now second lieutenants after graduating today. We've got team coverage for you on the scaled-down ceremony due to the coronavirus pandemic. We'll get to Alexis Dominguez and Chelsea Brensel in a few moments, but first, let's go to Crystal Story, who's live in the newsroom with a look at how the Academy adapted. Crystal.
Willis, these second lieutenants have waited 4 years for this moment. Many of them are headed to pilot school, and a select few will be some of the newest members of Space Force.
Dismissed! This is the first few moments of becoming a second lieutenant. Hey, I did it!
Now, in most cases, these new airmen and women have to be out of their dorms and on to their next assignment almost immediately after graduation. Some are able to go home for a bit before starting their new job, but because of the pandemic, it's unclear what happens next. And because of the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, families were forced to watch the graduation ceremony virtually. We continue our team coverage with Alexis Dominguez, who joins us live with how one family didn't let over 1,500 miles keep them from being a part of their son's big day. Alexis?
Crystal, graduation has been something Ryan L. has been looking forward to for years, but despite changes to the ceremony, his family says his story has always been one of perseverance.
Congratulations, Ryan. Cheers, Ryan O. Congratulations. Love you, baby.
The excitement of parents seeing their son graduate is best described through their own words.